All right, good afternoon. I'm going to stand while I'm up here and make it harder on the camera person over here. She has to follow me around as I move back and forth and around. Actually, when I found out I was being videoed, I went out and got my hair cut last night. If I talk this way a lot, it's because this is my better side. So I'm sorry I got my back showing to you. But although I do have a very light personality, what I do talk about is quite serious. But in my line of work, sometimes you need to maintain a sense of humor when doing these things. As you can imagine, what we see overseas, what we see in different places, can crumble you if you don't allow it to. So, what I am going to talk about today is justice in war. I'm not going to talk about the justice of war. So I'm not going to talk about whether or not it's right or wrong to go into Iraq or Afghanistan. Not my call. We have a commander-in-chief. We have a president. We have a national command authority. We take orders from them. When they ask my opinion, they don't say, hey, it's a good idea. They say, can we do it, and what will it take to do it? They don't say, these are the political objectives. And they say, what's the military end state for that? How can we best accomplish that with end strength, with resources, with people, power, equipment, those kind of things. So they never say, hey, think we should go to Iraq? Not my call, not what I do. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is how many folks in here, I wore a uniform today. As a fellow, I very rarely wear a uniform. So I wore a uniform today to make sure it still fit, first of all. And second of all, to elicit responses. Because if you wear a uniform around campus, around any place, actually off the military base, you elicit different responses. So you have some people, give you the head nods. Some people go, hey, how you doing? Some people go, ooh. Some people steer clear of you. Walking on the sidewalk, they run the other way for whatever reason. Because there are stereotypes that go with military uniforms. And whether or not it's the green one from the Army, or it's the Marines, or the Air Force, Navy, even the Coast Guard, from your 3-year-old when you get up, hey, Dad, are you a bus driver? Well, not exactly. When you wear your combat uniform, you get up in the morning and nobody knows if you actually changed your clothes that day because it's the same every day. So I'd get away with wearing the same thing all week long and nobody would know the difference unless there's some aroma to it. Then you obviously have to go through some laundry. But how many folks in here are familiar with the Army itself? We have a few. And this is a different discussion, but I just want to hit it real quick. The military itself has stayed about the same end strength for the last, actually we've gotten smaller. I'll give you a quick history. 50 years during the Cold War, actually 40 years during the Cold War, we had upwards of 60 divisions in the Army alone. We had several million people serving in the military, and we did 10 deployments worldwide. 10, that's it. Since the wall came down in 1989, for the past 21 years, we have downsized in the Army to 10 divisions. We went down to 500-some-odd thousand. When I came in, we had 800,000 people serving. We're at 530,000 now, and still going down a little bit more. And we have done 37 deployments in counting. So when you talk about the Cold War, you talk about Russia, the United States, everybody picked a side. There's a bipolar world. And everybody says, well, once the Cold War is over, we'll have a peace dividend. There'll be less deployments, less violence, less everything else. That hasn't exactly proven to be the fact. In 37 deployments in counting, and now that you add Libya to that, we'll be up to 38 deployments in counting. So even though we thought we had a peace dividend, we have a smaller force now and a larger United States population. So what does that mean? Actually, less people are serving. It's by design, but less people actually know people serving now. So I think it's good for us in uniform to get out and talk to you about who we are because, believe it or not, I'm just like one of you. I came from a small town in Florida. I went to college. I did all the things kids do these days. There is not some machine out there that builds these guys and sent us out there to go, be the Nazi Third Reich or something. So we come from America. We have the same standards and values and characteristics of Americans from all walks of life. I'm not here to talk about discriminatory policies within the Department of Defense either because, again, that's dictated by Congress, not by the military, believe it or not. And I know these kind of subjects are big here at Stanford. I read the Stanford Daily every day. I read the Daily Post because, to be honest with you, for 20 years, I've been serving for 21 years. For the last 20 years, I never got to read a daily newspaper because there really wasn't one on the military post. It's all about MWR events, morale, welfare, recreation. Go take a trip here, yada, yada, yada. But here I read the Daily Post, and it's fun to watch letters to the editor. I've been watching the ROTC debate. It's been a whole lot of fun to watch the ROTC debate. But again, not my fight. It's a Stanford fight. But I can give you my views on ROTC, what it did for me, what it did not do for me, what it does for those young guys, because you do have cadets here. There's a fantastic group of people. But that's another discussion altogether, too. So, that's kind of the background. As I talk about the number of deployments we've had, I want to talk about 3 characteristics of warfare, and then get into the ethical dilemmas that those actually throw out there. The first one is the military is trained, to put it bluntly, is to break things. We are designed to do conventional warfare, high-intensity conflict. We're designed to go destroy the fielded force. The fielded force is the other person's army that is on the field of battle. So if you think about the plains of Abraham, or you think about even the Gulf War. Saddam had his forces, we had ours. He closed with destroy, blow up the bad guys, call it victory, and then go to the house. Second type of operation we do is what we like to call stability operations. Stability operations are a little more nebulous in what the end state is. If you take peacekeeping operations, peace enforcement operations. I did peacekeeping operations in Macedonia. Our mission in Macedonia, while working for the United Nations, was to observe, monitor, and report. Observe, monitor, and report. So you can imagine that you're sitting there, you're observing, and you see something that is not right. And again, when I say not right, you have to take into the understanding the values of the person, and defining that as not right. We all come from different walks of life. If I give you a scenario, a vignette, and for a Palo Alto person, I give you that same vignette from someone from Montgomery, Alabama, they may look at that differently. Now, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it's just differently. I grew up on a ranch, small town, there's right and there's wrong. And then as I have gotten older, I realized that, well, there's not always right and wrong. There is a lot of gray areas. There are different ways of looking at things. Just look at Congress right now. Pick any year you look at Congress. They always look at these, and does anybody know if it's right or wrong what they're doing right now? No, you don't know until you get down the road and you look back. We all like to look back and say, well, that was 1970, whatever, that was a horrible. You pick your date and you go, well, they did this wrong. Then you can go back and you can rewrite what that is. But as of now, the argument on pick a topic is just that. It's two different views of looking at the same problem and trying to figure out a solution to that problem. So as you get older, through stability operations, peace enforcement, peacekeeping operations, I'm thinking observe, monitor, and report. Okay, I see something which I deem as inappropriate to Western values. And I say Western values because I was on the ground floor in 2001 into Afghanistan. I've been to the tactical level. I have walked the hills of Afghanistan. I've been on the border. I have walked the Pakistani border. I have broke bread with locals. I have drank tea with many. I've done the goat grab. I've eaten stuff that make a billy goat puke. And I have had these conversations, and we have talked about it. And I did not understand Afghanistan when I went in the first time. So what happens is the Army says, well, you didn't understand Afghanistan, so we're going to send you to Iraq now because you don't understand that either. I said, Roger, let's go. So I went to Iraq, a whole different ballgame, high-intensity conflict initially. And when it was done, I owned, and I say I owned because as a military person, you get dictated the area of operations, the southern portion of all of Baghdad, the Tigris south over to the Baghdad International Airport. That was my zone, if you will. And we got done. Saddam's forces were gone. Here I am in April, a city the size of Baltimore, 5 million people, and they look at you and they go, what now? I'm like, well, why are you asking me? I broke what I was supposed to broke. I'm going to leave now, right? No, you're not going to leave now. You're going to stay in Baghdad. You're going to do whatever it is you're supposed to do. So I go to my headquarters and I say, what am I supposed to do? And they say, I don't know. Nobody knew. So if you're the guy in charge and nobody knows what you're supposed to do, I have had zero training in nation building. Zero training in how to get a local government to stand up, a police force. They all left. There was nobody in charge in Baghdad. They all left. They scattered. When I came down the street wearing all my cool gear, carrying a weapon, they scattered. They were scared to death of what the military was. And you always hear, well, where were the parades? We had parades. I got pictures. I got man hugged, and I got all that kind of stuff. We had man kissing going on, and we were giving high fives, and they loved you for 2 days, maybe 3. And then they're like, well, now what? Then they go, well, if he's not going to stop me from going in here and taking what I want to take, I'm going to go take what I want to take, or I'm going to take what I need to take. The government took from me, I'm going to take back. And so that's when all the looting began, and all of a sudden now it was out of control because we had no idea as a nation what we wanted to do. And this goes back to we understand what we want to understand under Western logic. We use American logic. American logic is simple, right? Freedom for all, pursuit of happiness, domestic tranquility, all these things that we have within our own Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, that we say this is what we want to do. Now, if you look at their logic, I can sit down with a man in Afghanistan, which I have done, and we talk about, he tells me how bad the Russians are. Russians did this thing to me, Russians did that, the Russians were horrible people. I'm like, well, we're not the Russians. We're here to find Al-Qaeda, and we're here to let you do what you want to do. Meanwhile, in the back of that, they're beating their women because women aren't allowed to vote, aren't allowed to walk around, aren't allowed to be seen by outsiders. I actually landed a helicopter out near the Pakistani province, and the women went running inside their compound. And we sat down when the elders came out. We had tea, and we ate bread, and we had a lamb pulled, all that good stuff. And we stayed there for 24 hours. We laughed back and forth about where is the Pakistani border, because they said we're in Pakistan. We said, no, we're in Afghanistan. Matter of fact, I have a GPS to show you that. I pulled my GPS out there, like, GPS, what is that? Can you eat it? So, it was National Geographic right out of the magazine. They'd never seen a helicopter, never seen an American, let alone a helicopter. As we sat down and talked about this, we were doing relay races with the kids. It was we brought some soccer balls. We had a great time. It was a nice little, almost like a fun day with the village. But not a single female out there. The next day, they come out about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, bring more tea. We sit down, have tea, and he says, how much longer are you going to be here? So I don't know. We're still looking for Al-Qaeda guys. You got any ideas where they may be hiding? He says, well, we hope you leave soon because we need to get our women back to work. And of course, now you're thinking now, well, I'm trying to solve a problem here. I don't agree with his way of looking at the problem here, because although very nice people give you the shirt off their back, feed you wherever they're going to feed you, at the end of the day, it's what I would consider an extremist view on life, about the way they're structured, the way they live that, the way that women are inferior citizens, actually not even citizens, they're more of something they own. They're not allowed to do anything out except work the fields and wear the full garb, you struggle with that because that's not my mission there. You struggle with, hey, what am I supposed to do now if I see this 10-year-old beating his grandmother because he's allowed to, because he's a man and she's not? And you're thinking, dude, come here. I'll show you what we do back in my hometown with 10-year-olds that start to beat their grandmother. So you get that frustration in there because as Americans, we believe everybody's created equal, everybody's allowed the same rights. Matter of fact, we give rights to people that aren't even Americans around here. We give rights to everybody. And we think that everybody wants those same rights, the freedom to vote. It's not the case. In Afghanistan, out in the tribal areas, they don't care about voting. If they did vote, they'd vote for the same guy in charge anyway, because he is the tribal elder. That's a tribal way of looking at things. So we have to understand and solve problems from a different logic, which is the logic they use, which we don't really comprehend until you actually sit down and talk with these folks and you understand where it is they're coming from over long periods of time. So, observe, monitor, report. I was in Bosnia, and that was a peace enforcement operation, which gave me the ability to go in and use force as necessary, as needed. With one caveat. You can't actually use force because the rules of engagement are very strict. So I was not allowed to break up beatings. Not allowed to break up anything else you saw as a criminal type activity in a village or something else. Not your role. I'm there to separate belligerent forces, armed forces, if you will. So those not in uniform, now what do? Here you are driving through town again with your values and what you think is right and wrong. And oh, by the way, you've been trained to do other things, not necessarily these things. So you have to go in, you have to say, okay, this is inappropriate. What are my role now? Well, I call the local authorities. I try to bring them in. And we had some some UN police officers in here. We call the UN police officers and have them go do things. But you're restricted on what you can and cannot do as a military member in this type of environment. And I'll give you a prime example. There was a mass demonstration going on outside the town of Zvornik. There were some Muslims moved into a place that the Serbs didn't like. So they mobilized the masses. They bring the buses out. And they put them on the street. We had, I want to say, about 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids on the street that's going to block them as they come along. So as they're standing there, and they've got the shoulder to shoulder across the road, and they says, hey, you can't come this way. You need to stop right here. We're going to keep you guys separated. How do you think the Serbs reacted to that? Well, there's a lot of hooting and hollering. It's like a typical riot-type event. We've seen in America constantly, but what happened next was... But it never dawned on me you'd ever see this. A man walks up with about a 3-month-old child and shoves it in the soldier's face. So what do you do if you got a 3-month-old child shoved in your face? He's going to back up. He's like, whoa, hey, well, man, hey, kid. So makes a hole. They start pouring through. So now you've got a mass crowd of about 17 soldiers interspersed with all these Serbians who are fired up and angry about a village, a building. Something which to us seems very small because there's only about a dozen people living in this small village anyway, but it became the flashpoint for this. It's kind of like Wisconsin becoming a flashpoint for the United States. Everybody's sending assets and resources to Wisconsin. So many non-Wisconsinians up there trying to figure out an internal state thing. Same thing happened here. Serbs came from all over the place. Bosnian Muslims came from all over the place. This became the flashpoint. So now what do? You've got all these young guys that are interspersed within this huge crowd of people. And when you take this back and you try to learn from this, you say, okay, what just happened? We had video. Because we had helicopters over top. They had taken video of this whole episode. We brought it back to Germany to train the next unit going in. They were like, that'll never happen. put it in a scenario to train these people. Oh, they'll never happen. Nobody ever put a 3-month-old in front of somebody's face. You go here, watch the video. Watch the video right here. Now. Whoa. It's a different mentality and a different thought process. We have to prepare young people to go do that. To be honest with you, the people that are working the hardest within Iraq and Afghanistan are the 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are off the street, and they're on the checkpoint. They make life and death decisions based on limited information on what they have to do at that time. And it's in some of them you go, man, that was outstanding. I don't know how you did that. The restraint they show, to me, is just amazing. The restraint they show. All you get back here is the one guy that did the wrong thing. That's what they show on the media, and they'll run stories and stories and stories and stories about that guy. You know, they'll run stories about the guy that just got 20-some-odd years in prison because the 5 of those guys went out and killed Afghans. And it turns out that now the brigade commander has been reprimanded because he put out guidance policy, and he was more of a in-your-face than he was the population. Really, to succeed over there, we need to be able to understand the population. We need to be able to realize that it is an internal solution to what their problems are. It's not going to be a Western solution. It's not going to be our solution. We can talk to her blue in the face about, you know, democracy, rule of law, blah, 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 blah. But you need the horse to water. They need to be the ones that do it. But all we know about over here is the 5 guys that went out on a killing spree or whatever it is. Okay, past that, the last thing we have is humanitarian operations. You're all familiar with humanitarian operations. The military does them everywhere from Hurricane Niki to Andrew to Katrina, all in the United States. We've done tsunamis in Japan right now. We have a huge task force over there working with tsunami in Japan. Indonesia, Bangladesh. We've been all over the world doing humanitarian operations, and the main reason is because we can. The military has a readily available force that can go in and provide power, provide assistance, provide command and control networks, provide airlift, all those things that we can do. And we partner with USAID on many of those. AID obviously takes the lead on many of these, but we provide most of the lift assets for them to bring that stuff overseas. So those are the 3, I broke them down in 3 general groupings, if you will: high-intensity conflict, stability type operations, humanitarian operations. So if you know you're going to Bosnia, you go out and you train on stability operations, and you train up 6 months ahead of time to know that's what you're going to do. You do vignettes, you do training, etc. for them. And you come back, you go to Bosnia. As soon as you come back, what do? You turn around and do high-intensity conflict again, because that is our base of what it is we do. Back to going to break things. That's what we do. So, after I came back from Bosnia, I went back, learned to break things again, and then I left. The institutional army, as any large bureaucratic organization, is slow to adjust, slow to move. So all those lessons we had learned in Macedonia and Bosnia, you name a place, we kind of put those off to the side. We go back to doing high-intensity conflict again. So when Afghanistan came along, in Afghanistan we would call it irregular warfare. You have conventional warfare, which is your traditional force-on-force button heads, and you have irregular warfare, which is less of that and more of you don't know what you're going to do until you go on a patrol and you go figure out where these people are. It's about learning human intelligence. It's about learning what's out there and trying to come to solutions that they actually have the most part of. And we're just out there trying to facilitate that discussion, if you will. I think humanitarian operations are self-explanatory. If you trained up for each one of those individually, that's easy. But in Iraq, you did all 3 simultaneously. That is a hard thing to ask anybody to do. On one block, if you go into Sadr City in Baghdad, on one block you're doing high-intensity conflict. On the next block over, you're running checkpoints, doing stability operations. And on the 3rd block over, you're actually providing assistance. You're providing blankets, food, all the kind of things that they need to survive as you're trying to get their electric power grid back up and do their sewage. It is nation building at its finest, of which we had no training at all before we went in there. So how do you teach young people, or even old guys like myself, how do you get them prepared to go in to see what we call the 3-block war, which is 3 distinctly different types of operations all at the same time? And you're talking about, you know, for the students in here, your kids your age. And you know, what you're thinking about right now is, I should have eaten chow before I came in here. It's getting kind of late already. I missed my, what am I do this afternoon? Well, the sun's back out. I'm going to go play some Frisbee. And these kids are trying to worry about, now, okay, I see a kid walking this way. Has he got an IED? Is he planting something? Is he marking his territory? What's this guy doing? I'm at a checkpoint. There's a car coming. The car knows he's got to stop. It's a sign he didn't stop. But is he really going fast or is he going slow enough? Should I shoot? Should I shoot up in the air? What do I do now? Those are the decisions on a daily basis they make over there. And that's not easy. That's not easy at all. As a commander, we have what we call the moral dilemma. I have to weigh, when I have a target, I have to weigh the threat to the security of my guys, the threat to the civilians that are there, and the target, priority of that target. How much do I need to service this target? Do I really need this guy that bad that I'll risk the civilian casualties and casualties of my guy? And that's and each one of those pieces of the pie will be bigger or smaller depending on what that target is. If it's Saddam, you're going to take more risk on the civilian side, your own guy's side, because you want the big target. If it's just a small ID guy, do you wait until you get something else out? And if you do wait, and he does play another ID and you lose 3 or 4 soldiers, then what? The hardest thing to do in leadership in a combat zone is having deaths in your unit and sending that unit back out and having that leader at the lowest level be able to say, okay guys, listen, we're going to maintain the rule of law, we're going to maintain our rules of engagement, we're going to do the right thing, because even though the enemy doesn't, we're going to do the right thing. That's hard to do. You guys have all played a game someplace with somebody, maybe cards, Monopoly, whatever else, where the other guy's cheating. So what do you do when the other guy's cheating? Do you continue to play by the rules and lose the game, or you cheat too to get up to where he is? Or can you still win by not cheating? That's the justice in war. It's important for us, the moral imperative, that we stay by the rules no matter what. Regardless of what you think about Abu Ghraib, regardless of what you think about waterboarding, we need to maintain the high ground, the moral high ground. And we preach that. And we say, listen, we must stay at this level right here because we are doing the right thing. Now, just as the war itself, I don't care about it. But while I'm deployed and I'm in theater, we're going to do things the right way. And you have to get that message across to all the guys that are on there. So how do we do that? And I got 3 things here I put down. The first one's setting the right tone. The most critical job of a commander in counterinsurgency operations is set the right tone and communicate that to the troops themselves. Now I'm going to give you a quick vignette. Najaf, southern Iraq, holiest city for the Shia in all of Iraq. Outside the Al-Imam Mosque, we had a battalion in there early April 2003. And as they were coming in towards the mosque, the exiled leader, the Grand Ayatollah, had just came back from Britain, and he was down there, and there were some agitators in the crowd who were going out there saying, the Americans are here for the Ayatollah, they're here to take the mosque because they're anti-Islam. And no matter what you do, there's always going to be somebody saying you're anti-Islam, regardless of, you defend all the Muslims in Bosnia, people forget about that one completely. You're always anti-Islam, so that's something you understand going in. So as the agitators, which is always only a few, even in America it's only a few, the agitators go out, and they start rounding up the crowd. So the crowd's getting all, not coming in, and the crowd got large, several thousand. There's a video, actually, you can go find it on YouTube someplace. So what did the commander do on the ground? This is very important, because if you change that commander, you put another guy in charge, you could have a different outcome, which would not be nearly as good as one we had. He walks the crowd, and he tells right behind his guy, he says, hey, take a knee. Take a knee. Now imagine that. You've got a huge, riotous crowd there who's got rocks and trying to throw things, and they're saying, hey, we're talking thousands in the crowd. He says, take a knee. And he tells them all to smile. Just smile. They all take a knee, they start smiling, and the crowd's looking around going, wait a minute, these aren't the bad guys we've been led to believe these are. These guys aren't the devil. They're not in here to take the mosque or anything else. They start looking around. The agitators start trying to agitate some more. So he talks to one of the guys and picks up the unit and just starts walking out, just starts leaving. Diffuse the entire situation. Now, put a different guy in there who says that, hey, guess what? You want a piece of me? You throwing rocks at me? Wait a minute. And then you do one small slip up, one guy gets nervous, fires one shot, and you have a massacre on your hands. You have a full-fledged battle right in the streets of Najaf outside the Imam Ali Mosque, which is the most holy mosque in all of Iraq. That's the important part of leadership and how to set the right tone. We had the right guy, and I will tell you that having served for 21 years for a variety of commanders, we could have very easily had the wrong guy. But the straws dropped where they may, and he was the guy there at the time made the exact right call. Second piece is what we call the strategic corporals and lieutenants. Those are the youngest. Lieutenants are all commissioned officers, college graduates, bachelor's degrees. You put that guy in charge of 30 young men. He goes, okay, you're the guy in charge now. Go out and do these things. So you've got a lieutenant out there going, okay, hey, whoa, I just last week, You know, I was out of Stanford University going to football games and fraternity parties, and here I am now, and I'm in Afghanistan having to make these decisions. And the 18-year-old's down there going, man, I just left my prom, you know, I got to know what I got to do too. And these are the guys that are on the front line. And they're the ones that make a decision, which we call the strategic corporal lieutenant, because in the old days, that dude could do anything you want to do, and you probably wouldn't hear about it back here. But we have a guy in Bosnia, a young man who broke up a fight. He took his pistol out, and he fired a warning shot in the air, because the Serbs knew that we wouldn't do anything, so they didn't listen to him. And they kept beating up this Muslim guy with sticks, and they were so he took his pistol out, fired a pow! All these guys jumped up, and they ran off. And that shot was on the front page of the Stars and Stripes newspaper all over Germany. Man, fire shot, NATO forces, it was a big deal. But it was the right thing to do. He did the exact right thing, all within the rules of engagement. But that became a strategic issue. Now let's think about Abu Ghraib. A couple kids in there stacking naked guys in pyramids and taking pictures of them at the lowest level. Staff sergeants, specialists, and you saw them all going to court, 20 years old, 26 years old, 19 years old. Regardless if somebody told them to do that or not, they're taking pictures and laughing and giggling about it. And that became a huge, huge strategic event. Just because they were taking pictures and doing fraternity-type hazing.
What about at the highest levels?
Well, everything to do with the highest level is strategic. I mean, what I do, what my boss does, the chairman, MFI commander, General Petraeus, and that's all strategic level. That's the grand scheme, if you will.
No, I mean, during the time of Abu Ghraib, I mean, I understand that there were specific instructions and legal memos of some volume that were being produced, and they were contrary to treaty law.
Yeah, you're getting into CIA interrogation techniques and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I don't know whether they're.
I'm just talking about staking naked guys in a pyramid and taking pictures of them. I mean, nobody ever told anybody to do that. Now, whether or not you talk about interrogation techniques, that's a different argument, and I'm not going to justify anything they did over there because I have no idea what went behind those doors. What I do know is, though, that if you're taking dog collars around guys and taking pictures, it's not torture, but it's also not right. I mean, that's decent humanity will tell you, what are you doing? Barking dogs and naked dudes. I mean, that's just what they did was not right. And they should have said, if somebody told me to do that, I'd say, no, I'm not going to do it. Next question. We have an obligation in the military as a commissioned officer, and I take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me. I take that oath. At the end of that oath, though, there is if an order is illegal, immoral, or unethical, I'm not required to follow it. So you say, now, what is unethical? What is illegal? What is immoral?
Not required or required not to?
I'm not. Yeah. Well, you're not required to. You're required not to. Either way, you're not going to do it. Shouldn't do it. If you do it, then it's not illegal, immoral, or ethical to you, or you're spineless or something like that. But the bottom of the day, if I get an illegal order, I'm not going to do it. If it's unethical, I'm not going to do it. Immoral, I'm not going to do it. Now, there's always those. I always get the question, and I'll answer right up front. Hey, what if somebody gives you a really stupid order? Okay, stupid order. Stupid again is going to Congress. You know, I mean, there's two sides to every order, and nobody, I think, intentionally gives a stupid order, or they wouldn't think it was stupid. They think it's a good thing at the time. I went back and forth with those who are familiar with Doug Fife. I'm on camera, so we'll go someplace else. We had, yeah, there was we were dropping leaflets. And the thing about psychological operations are, and you guys, you see in the press, they always get a bad thing. Psychological operations, you mess with somebody's mind. Actually, psychological operations is about telling the truth. I mean, that's what it's about, telling the truth. If I tell you to be out of this village at 1,700 hours, I'm going to bomb it, at 1,700 hours, I better bomb it. Because if I don't, then I just became a liar. So whatever my leaflet says, I better follow it. And the leaflet we were dropping over Iraq in early 2003, or as we were going into March, said, we are coming in. You need to surrender. Put up a white flag, a white t-shirt, whatever you got. Put it up there. And in Arabic. So we hand that over to some people in the Pentagon. And they looked at it and they started editing it. Because, well, they can't read Arabic. So they're editing the English portion. And we said, I understand you're editing the English portion, but it's in Arabic. So it's not a word for word. It's generally, this is what it says. Yeah, but we shouldn't say that. We should say, cross it, happy to glad type stuff. You're like, okay, you're not understanding it again. It's in Arabic. Here's the real one. Arabic. That's English translation, literally translated. And all of you in here that are dual language speakers understand that there is no word for word literal translation of English to whatever the language is you're doing. In Arabic, it's even worse. I mean, it's not even close. Well, we need to say, again, never mind. You're right. We'll change that right there just like it is. Okay. And it doesn't change because Arabic, the translation was exactly what we wanted to say. So that's psychological operations. You drop the leaflets in, and if it says something on there, you better follow that. That's where the ethical portion of that comes in. You must follow what's on that leaflet. You must follow what's on your psychological operations message. So if you don't, then you become the liar, and your psychological operations becomes not so the fact. Last thing I have is the benefit to bad guy analysis. And that's the most critical piece because for 21 years, I have been trained in the Army to go get the bad guy, regardless. Get the bad guy, get the bad guy. Now you're sitting back going, okay, what's the benefit to bad guy analysis? If I go in and I take down this village right here, and I go in, there's a guy right here, he's a bad guy, I need to get him. But if in that time I go in and I destroy houses, I destroy vehicles, I shoot dogs, I take out 10, 15 civilians that didn't need to be, or collateral damage, if you will, have I actually benefited the mission, the overall mission? At the time, I've got the bad guy off the street. I got the one guy off the street. But imagine if the police force in Palo Alto found a guy held up someplace, and they went in and knocked down 4 or 5 villages, or 4 or 5 buildings to get the one building. Now you've just pissed off the 4 or 5 people around that. You've pissed off all the neighbors and the fans and the family of them. And in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's even different because it's tribal. So the tribal portion of that is even larger because once you get the tribe on the wrong side, then you're fighting the entire tribe and not just the few people you went in for. And early on, the dynamics that we didn't understand is we would go trawling with fishing nets. And you would go out and you would say, okay, hey, let's take these 50 guys and you bring them in for questions. And it turns out that 49 of those guys were just trying to earn a living. We got that guy, though, but what about those 49? Now, they have a bad taste in their mouth because of the way they were handled, the way they were mistreated, or whatever it may be. Even if they weren't. What you realize quickly is perception is reality. And if the perception is that you're doing things the wrong way, well, then the reality is you're doing things the wrong way. Either way. But I will tell you, the town of Samara, up in northern, which was a hotbed of insurgent activity, put a new unit in there with a new commander. By the time they left, the most trusted people in all of Samara was not the local police force, wasn't the tribal elders, wasn't the imam, it was the U.S. military because they did things the right way. It's not that way everywhere, but that's an example. They did things the right way, and they knew that if you came in there and you told them something, you were going to do it. One of the most difficult ethical decisions we have as we go over there, outside of the killing portion of that, which is understandable for military officers, is that when you sit down, you break bread, and you're having a conversation with somebody, and I tell you I'm going to do something, not only do I have to do it, but I have to ensure that the guy follows me in there and does it. I may not be there forever. I mean, that's something you sit and you go, okay, listen, I'm going to build this for you. And in the way our budget works, there may not be any money to continue a project you started. That's why we always try to make sure that we have a project with a start and end date and the money up front to start that project. Because the last thing you want to do, which you'd be surprised at how many projects we started through the CPA, Coalition Provincial Authority, early on with you've all seen the $20 billion Congress allocated for rebuilding Iraq. How many projects we started, and you'll laugh at this, you may not, because you see it here, you start building a bridge, and the contract coming over the bridge, it could cost a little more than that. Well, over there, it was a lump sum. So if this project cost $5 million to build this power plant, when $5 million was up, they left. And you'd have a project 80% done, 85% done, and they'd leave it. Here you go, Iraq, it's yours. And you're like, well, wait, that's not complete. I'm out of money. And that money was allocated already, and it was a disastrous, in my opinion, of course, these are my opinion, not necessarily those of the Department of Defense or the Department of the Army, just so we're clear straight up, that it was our effort to rebuild Iraq early on was disastrous because we had no idea what we were doing, and contractors, subcontractors, and everybody else started taking off that, and it was not doing what I thought we needed to do, was putting people to work. And talk about a jobs program, it was not. If you built a power plant in Baghdad, we subcontract through one group, which subcontract to another group, which eventually subcontract to South America, or South Africa, which again subcontract to somebody else in France. And they hired Indian workers, or Filipinos, or somebody else. There's like 2 Iraqis working. And half the money that we were spending over there to go there was not even staying in the country. It was going out to all these different subcontractors. completely crazy. With that said, I'm going to open up some questions, and we'll start over here with you.